Okay, here we go. Well, welcome to another Zoom forum in conversation about physical health. And this week we wanted to talk about how we relate to our body. Or you could say, I think what we actually put on the topic was how we relate with our body. And both of those will have slightly different connotations for different people. For instance, if I say relate to my body, it's like it's something that I'm in relation to out there. And if I say relate with my body, it has a connotation for me, at least, of like a being that I'm with, or it's relating to me and I'm relating to it. So I just like those little, the little changes in intention, if you like, of the words. I find quite useful. So why this is an important topic for me is at various points, in my the experience of my physical health challenge, I have found myself relating to it in different ways. And the first time there was a really big difference in the way that I was relating to it was before I came across the principles. I had been pretty much a victim of my health challenge, I would say, a victim of the limitations caused by my sclerosis. And fairly unawares, I was holding the relationship of being at the mercy of my body, if you like. And I was putting a brave face. I was doing relatively useful things to keep myself in good spirits, and doing all the techniques I knew, which helped a little. And it wasn't really until what I would now call, I had a big insight, if you like, in terms of how I was relating to my body, that things started to change for the better, quite significantly for the better. And that came one morning about 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock in the morning, I was lying in bed, and the previous day I'd had a cranial osteopathy treatment, and the osteopath was a friend of mine who had been referring to my sclerosis as a lesion, which I'm sure is probably one of the technical terms for a sclerosis on the spinal cord. I'm sure Alan probably knows more than I do. And so he kept referring to it as a lesion, and in passing, I think he said, he called it a liege. He just shortened the lesion to a liege. And about 4 o'clock the next morning, I woke up and just completely, I was fairly annoyed that I'd woken up at 4. I was fairly annoyed that because that had become a bit of a pattern, that I was waking up at 4 and in discomfort and tossing and turning and couldn't go back to sleep. And just into my head popped this word liege. And For those who don't know English, for those who English is a foreign language, the word liege in English refers to it's a sort of courtly statement. There's another way of spelling liege, which is it's a term of respect to some. My lord, you might say, my lord. What shall I do for you, my lord, or my liege? It's a very old-fashioned English word, and in that moment when the word popped into my head, I started feeling that place in my neck as if I was in relation to a liege, a lord, someone that I had great respect for, and I was a servant to. And all of this happened, completely out of the blue. And instantly, a whole new set of thinking came with it. As soon as I had that relationship shift, I saw the possibility of learning from this sclerosis. I saw the possibility of learning from what the circumstances were giving me. I saw the possibility of being open to whatever life was giving me, as opposed to the state that I'd been in, which was, like I said, begrudging or resentful or at the mercy of or the victim of, and that was just my lot. So there was for me, that was, and like I said, this is before the principles. This was becoming aware of how the way I view my body, the way I view my challenge, had such an impact or such a hold over me. And since coming across the principles, it explains why that happened, if you like. It explains the fact that fresh thinking is available at any moment, for one thing, and that it can come from out of the blue. And it also explains how my reality had been held or being created previous to that. So as soon as my thinking changed by just that humorous calling it a liege, everything changed. And since then I've had my down days, but I've never gone back to the same level of it's hard to try and access what it was, but it was very much things are only going to get worse. It was that was the relationship that I had with my body, that it was downhill. It was downhill. It was a whole bunch of thinking that I don't have now. I might have glimpses of all sorts of negative thoughts, but because I don't have the same the fundamental relationship with my body, they don't have such hold on me. So that for me, I mean, there's there's lots of other ways since that, in looking at this word, how do I relate to my body? There's lots of other ways that have impacted. In some ways, I could say that was a little bit like a teacher-student relationship. It's a little bit like I was the student learning from my challenge. At other times, this morning I was thinking about this. I was feeling, I just had a cup of coffee, and quite often when I have my first morning cup of coffee, I could feel my heart rate increasing, and I could feel the sort of the adrenaline rush, which sometimes I get a little bit fearful of. And this morning I just had the thought, in terms of relating to my body, I thought, how would it be just for this to be exactly as it should be? How would it be for this sensation to be completely just how would it be if I just allowed it to be exactly as it is? What would that mean about the relationship? What's the relationship when I have no judgment, I have no wish to change it, I have no wish to fix anything, I have no wish to even to learn anything from it? And instantly in that moment, I felt like me and my body were two friends sitting on the edge of the sea looking out together. And it was, and again, that for me is like this feeling of relationship with that. We were just two beings, two really good friends, enjoying the moment. And sure enough, my heart rate calmed down, and I had a really nice feeling. So I
really love that what you just said, that these two friends sitting there and looking out and being in the moment, because what comes to mind is that they're two really close friends. And when we're in that space, there's nothing but unconditional love. So that means there is no labels. There is no meaning, and just exactly perfect. There's two friends on a journey together. There's the being side of it, living in a, like you call it sometimes, Mick, a spacesuit. And the spacesuit and the being are in complete harmony with each other, traveling a journey, which is the human being in its lifetime. And I love that. And when you were talking, something else came to my mind when I was really, really impacted by something, and that was way, way before I came across the principles. And I was never really aware that has actually got to do with the relationship to my body or with my body. And it only just sort of clicked in, and it's quite a powerful example. So I would like to share it with you. What happened when I was really sick and being in pain a lot and suffering, and like you, I felt a victim of my health challenge. I felt like I was trapped somehow. I couldn't get better, I couldn't get tried everything, and somehow I already knew that I was trapped in a vicious circle, but I didn't really know how to. So all it was that I was feeling more and more, what can I say, it's like there was no choices for me. I just had to live like this. And I was constantly speaking about that. I was speaking about how I was struggling. I was speaking about how I was suffering, and speaking about what was wrong today and what was wrong yesterday. And there was one occasion and we had friends coming over for a social evening. We were sitting together having a barbecue or something. And this guy, he's called Ray. He also, at the time, he was giving me some reflexology treatments. So he sort of knew me better than other people did, because, you know, through speaking about certain things, he knew what was going on for me and inside of me. And now we were hanging out with friends in this you know, evening setting. And I said something, and then he answers and he says, "Oh, Katja, can't you talk about something else? Is that all you ever talk about, that you're sick? You're far more than that." My God, I was really hurt by that. In the first moment, I was really, really upset. And Mick, you know what it's like when I get upset, you know. I get sort of, you know, I can't help myself. I had to go inside. I was having a little weep, you know, hide it in myself. And I thought, this is all not nice and all this. Then something hit me. I was like, but what if that's actually true? What if I was more than a sick person? And I was like waking up, and I wasn't hurt at all. So I must have just got a fresh thought, because I somehow knew that the guy wouldn't want to hurt me. So I sort of woke up to the fact that actually there was something to that. And I actually then looked at myself, and I found out how I was identifying myself with all those symptoms. And I thought, that was me. A sick person who doesn't function properly, a sick person who's suffering all the time. And actually, when I think back now, I kept that experience in place because I kept relating on that level to my own self. I identified with that so much that that was exactly what I got, you know, through my own innocent creation. And looking back, I think the first time that I sort of jumped out of a vicious circle situation, and after that, I came across other things that first of all made a difference in my life and in my health issues too. I came across different therapies, different things that opened up towards looking at different things. So the relationship, as soon as it crumbles, the way we see it now, there's room for fresh thinking coming in. And it can change. And the best and the optimum would be those two companions that, you know, look out into life and tackle it together as two really good friends. But we can't always choose that. You know, we can only make ourselves aware of that. That's what's happening, and looking at that, and where does that experience come from?
I mean, when I was, you know, we've spoken before about this, and when I was thinking about the different relationships that we can have, I mean, the possible relationships are infinite. You know, you know, whether it's those good friends, or whether it's you know, some people might regard it as an intimate lover, or some people might regard you know, their body as an enemy, or some people might regard their body as a nuisance, or, you know, there's an infinite possibility of how to relate. And for me, the key thing is seeing that it's there at all, that there is that relationship, that we, exactly like you said, that if it gets held in a particular way, that's where the problem is. If we identify with just the one fixed thing. And it's not that one kind of relationship is right or another is wrong. It's knowing that there's possibilities. It's knowing that there's infinite possibilities, that you see the nature of it rather than because again, it's like I've heard, I'm sure people have said to me, it's down to whether you love yourself or not. It's important to love yourself, and if that becomes a technique, it's something else to beat ourselves up with. It's like, oh, I haven't loved myself enough, or oh, that's why I'm sick, or that's where I've created this because I didn't love myself enough, or etc. So that for me, as much as I like having the relationship to my good friend looking out over the sea, and that's wonderful. For me, it's even more powerful to know that it's not the only possibility, or it's not the one I should have.
Yeah, but that's the only way, isn't it? That
Yeah.
we can relax into knowing that there is all those possibilities.
Yeah.
And then the paradox is that if we let that go, the chances are that we actually land in
the natural one. Yeah.
Yes, because it is the most natural one, while all the others are made up through our innocent, mostly unconscious thinking. And it's just, you can't choose. I mean, you can't choose in the moment. You fall into a situation, and that happened to me. It's not long ago when I was in Dublin. I suddenly find myself on the floor, doubled up in pain, in my back muscles spasm. I mean, I didn't even have the time to choose what kind of relationship I had in that moment to my body, right? As it happened, and that was quite fascinating for me, was that though I couldn't move my little finger and I was really in pain, I happened to have the clarity of being fascinated about it. I was just curious, and I thought, what the hell is going on? How does this serve me? Popped into my mind. And then I just happened to become really still. So obviously I was sitting next to my body as a really not threatening relationship. I was just there with it somehow. And it just happened that way. And I was very lucky, because I could have panicked. I could have gone crazy about that, because if you can't even reach your phone and you can't even reach out for help, what the hell do you do, right? But I found myself becoming very quiet, and though there was a friend in the house, she was far away upstairs. And all I did was listen. I was listening, and then it popped in. When it popped in, the first bit of like an insight in that moment was that you need to stop believing the tension to be a reality. And I was like, wow. And actually, instantly in that moment, the whole tension in the body gave in quite a bit. Not completely, I was still in pain, but there was a relief. And then I was able to call for help. So there was this relationship that naturally supplied me with the solution, really. I knew I had to relax. I just had to relax and question that tension. And at the same time, I knew that my body was giving me really valuable information here. That was so obvious. So my good friend, my body, was giving me that information that I had to question that feeling of tension. And I had had it quite some time, that I sort of walked around with feeling tense in my back, up here and down here. And I sort of was instantly grateful, because I thought, okay, my body's just pulled the plug. it says, no more believing this. Look into where this experience comes from. So I found myself becoming very grateful, and I managed to crawl into bed because it sort of given in quite a bit with the pain. And then my friend, she helped me, and she gave me tissue salts and surely helped to get quickly back to normal. While normally I've heard that people, when that happens, they just have to call the ambulance. So I was very lucky. In the moment when something like this happens, all you have is the level of consciousness that you have. And making ourselves aware of where we're at with our bodies probably opens the door to seeing something else. I don't want to call it a doing, because it's not, but it's just looking in that direction. And I feel like for me, that makes sense.
Is that a good place to open it up and see?
Yes, absolutely.
So would anyone like to give an example of how they relate to their body, or anything that you've seen in terms of relating differently, or how it's made a difference? If you just Annegret.
I think.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I could say something. Something that struck me when you were talking, Mick, is when do we separate from our body? Because you know, when you're a child, it's your best friend. It's your body. That's my experience. And I know when I became a teenager, then it sort of got the name my enemy, because it turned out to be someone else that I had expected. You know, you change a lot. And there's a lot of competition, and I got very ill in my teenage years, and I didn't get the real nursing and the real what's called recovering time. So I fight a lot with the tiredness, which became chronic because I never rested enough. You don't when you're a teenager. So I think when do we separate from the body and relate to it instead of being with it as a good friend? And then when do we make friends again?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I could say the answer.
No, it's just
generally.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say for me, I think I ignored my body in, certainly through my teens and so on. I think it was just, I don't think I liked my body. I don't think it was the body I wanted. I didn't order this one.
No, that's a problem.
Um, I might have been with it in my younger years, but certainly in my teens onwards, I didn't order this one, and I think probably that relationship stayed with me as I started studying Tai Chi when I was 19, or and became a teacher of Tai Chi about 23, and I never liked my body, so it never felt like it did the things I wanted it to do, or so I was creating a relationship with it through the Tai Chi, but at the same time I still hadn't clocked the power of thought. And I think, looking back on it now, it's like if I had known about the principles way back then, life would have been very different.
Yes.
Or, as I'm sure is the case for most people. If I saw no, I mean your question, when do we separate? I mean, it's if I had known the principles when I was 13, it would have been completely different. So there wouldn't be any, the question wouldn't make sense, if you see what I mean. Does that make sense? It's not like an inevitable thing that culturally we separate from being easy in our bodies or whatever. I think it's going to be very, very different for everyone.
Yeah.
And some people very happy in their bodies.
Well, I used to be happy in my body, and I got sick anyway.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily where it starts. But I think we're starting to create a relationship in the moment when our conditioning starts. And it's very innocent, and most of it is completely unconscious. We're not aware of that. I mean, for me, when I think back, when I was really, really little, I can remember that for Christmas, I was singing in front of the Christmas tree for our very, very little family. And I got a memory of that. I really enjoyed that. But then there came a time where I didn't at all. So some sort of conditioning came in there without me noticing. And I don't even know if we can prevent that. Even when we know about the principles, can we really prevent what we believe, what we get to believe and what not about ourselves? It's so ingrained, it's so natural when we are born that we get born into a human experience where all this conditioning is part of that. And I feel, Anna-Greta, with your question, in a way, the thought came to me that it doesn't really matter when it starts and when it ends. The important bit is that we can any moment now see through the illusion all of that is. It's sort of coming back and jumping out of the feeling of having a certain relationship. Because at the end of the day, these two things, the body and the spirit, they are one. In that regard, in the space of where there is no conditioning. They're already one and together, and they're already those friends, and they will always be those friends, except for in our perception. So now getting into this, analyzing and wanting to understand this relationship, it's probably not going to serve us. It's rather knowing that there is one and knowing its illusionary nature. That's where the juice is. Because there already are those wonderful friends that are joined in the journey and connected through unconditional love. We are that already. I don't know if that's...
Is that okay too?
Yeah.
I saw
It's
that.
okay.
Thank you. I saw that Alan was waving. Hi, Alan. You're unmuted.
Is that how I get your attention? By the way,
By the way, that seemed to work, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
No, it's if people have a camera, that's great. A great way of doing it. But if you don't, then you'll have to send me or Katja a chat message.
Oh, okay.
But you've got a camera, so I saw you, so that's great.
Okay.
I'm seeing everyone at the moment.
This has been so interesting to me because I'm not really used to thinking of my body as something separate from me. I was loading a snow tire yesterday, and I dropped the tire, and I jammed my one of my fingers, and it hurt. It hurt so bad, but it didn't mean anything. I mean, it really hurt, and it might be damaged in some way, but it didn't mean anything to me. Like the stuff that has happened with MS. I mean, every symptom I have is so filled with meaning. You know, it might mean I'll be in a wheelchair in a month. It might mean I'll lose my vision. It might, who knows, right? It has all this what if going on in my head. And for me, the value of Sid's work is that I found a place or a way of being that was incredibly safe, that I could go to. I could go to this safe place that was not caught up in all this thinking and all this insecurity, and that in that safe place I could see, well, there's just there's the common sense. The MS symptom of losing feeling in my legs is not fundamentally different from the jamming of my finger, taking a snow tire out of the car. It's a physical symptom, and if I can be safe, then my own common sense will tell me what I need to do next. And sometimes it takes a while to find that safe place again, but I'm always drawn back to the part of me that responded and resonated with the truth of the three principles and the insights that Sid had. So that's what I do. When I'm freaking out, I look for that safe place again and do whatever it is that I can think of to do that will return me to that place. And it might be remembering something that Sid said, or it might be going for a walk, or it might be patting myself on the shoulder and forgiving myself for freaking out. It could be lots of different things, but for me, the value of understanding all this is to be able to find safety when the world gets really, really scary. And that's what those are the few thoughts I have.
I really appreciate you saying that, because That resonates so much with me. It is the biggest simplicity of just going back to the safe place. It's going back to using that metaphor of the relationship. It's like giving ourselves back to our best friend and knowing that he's gonna be there for us, right? Patting
Yeah.
you on your shoulder and saying, it's all right, you're just free. It doesn't matter. That's where all healing comes from, is giving ourselves back to that. And the whole relationship, and why we chose this subject, is because it's a very visual metaphor, and we can catch ourselves in it. And at any time, wherever we are with our relationship in that, there is the possibility to see, like you say, it's one and the same, but still there is a spirit living in a body that makes a human being. Okay, so the being bit is the purest spirit, and the human bit is the body with all its labels, with all its, like, the personality and what the body is like and what our health is like and all those things, but they come together. The problem starts when we think they are two different things, and bringing it back together as one is where all healing comes from.
It's it's interesting for me, because I love the feeling of what you're saying, Alan. And I didn't meet Sid, and I can see from the videos I've watched and so on that the power of that direct connection, and all the people that I've been taught by, talk about the feeling, and so when you talk about the safe place, for me that speaks to the feeling. And for me, how I personally find it being useful, although not true, I find it being useful to think of the body as separate, although it's not true, is because when I was at my most victim position, if you like, when I was in that, it felt like anything that my body was experiencing was me.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, that I was, it was being one was not a good thing. Because every pain I felt was I wasn't good enough, or every tiredness I felt was, well, I just can't get it together. Because if my body is me, do you see what I mean? So I'm not saying we're not, there's no separation between mind and body, but somehow being able to see that the essence of me was different from the body was useful for me. It was useful for me to find that the safe feeling.
Yeah. So that's what one thing you do to find
that's one thing that I do is to explore the relationship, I guess. Explore or to notice the relationship in if something. I mean, it often happens, you know, if I wake up at 4 a.m, which still continues, and I get all sorts of discomfort and restless symptoms in the guts, and all sorts of things happen. And I think very quickly I notice what is my relationship to that. What is my relationship to it? And like you were saying about the meaning we make of it, where do the thoughts go? You know, where do the thoughts go with, you know, oh my God, I'm awake at 4 o'clock again, and I'm going to feel dreadful tomorrow if I don't get back to sleep. And, you know, then other times I'll just, very interestingly, I had a coaching session with I was being coached by a minister, an Anglican minister, and he said to me, and I wasn't, you know, I've never been particularly Christian, or I kind of took myself away from it at an early age. And so what he said was, oh, well, 4 o'clock is when I get woken up by God. And it wasn't at the time, it wasn't a particularly good coaching intervention, but it was very useful. You know, in later, having come across the principles, it's very useful to see, you know, to see it from a different perspective. You know, it gives new thinking. Anyway.
I used to, my wife and I used to be pastoral caregivers for hospice. And one of the things that it turned out to not be a great fit, because one of the things that seems to be true is that when people are dying, they tend to want comfort from the religious beliefs they grew up with as kids. And we just didn't have the depth of cultural knowledge to go into deep Catholicism or deep, you know, religions. But one of the things that struck me was a lot of the pastoral caregivers were near-death experience survivors. And it was incredible being around these people because they would talk about the body, the arm, the head. You know, they never talked about my body, my arm, my head anymore. And it was so fascinating being around people that had that kind of intimate understanding and ability to see themselves as not their body, you know, not one and the same. And that was one thing that really sticks with me. So I've been, you know, not hoping for a near-death experience, but it might happen.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any thing they'd like to share, or anything that's cropped up for you?
No, what comes to my mind, maybe that's helpful, from our course we've done in October. One of the participants gave us the feedback that she'd realized that the way she relates to her body was like not helpful, because she was very critical, very, very critical with her body, and very not being able to accept the body for what it is in the moment. And she compared it to her own relationship with her partner. And she suddenly realized that the way she was relating to her body was blaming the body in the way. And she thought, well, it wouldn't be any point, with the understanding of the principles anyway, wouldn't be any point to blame my partner for this and for that, when I know that my experience of my partner comes from me. And so she started to see that her experience of her body and her health issues comes from her. So there was the whole new angle for her to be seeing that what she knows to be true in a real relationship with her partner could be exactly the same like having the relationship with the body. It's like in seeing that the experience we have for whatever is going on is always coming from us. So if I try to fix that, I look in the wrong direction. And what she used to do is like doing lots of different ways of eating well and supplements and trying this and trying that and lots of doing on the outside. And when she saw the futility of trying to change her partner, thinking, oh, that won't work. There's nothing I can do. I can only step back and look at my own relationship, that the responsibility lies within me and that it's innocent. It's just the way I happen to think. And that with a partner, she wouldn't try to fix the partner anymore. She would just let it be as it is, and then it would change. So therefore, this metaphor of the relationship can be really helpful, because we have relationships with all sorts of things. We have real relationships with our partner, with children, with colleagues, with money, with all sorts of things. And I find when I see friends and colleagues, very often that we have areas in life where we see the principles clearer at work and where it's really helpful. And then there's other areas in our lives where we don't seem to see that, where we see an exception and we're running into difficulties. But if we bring it back to the relationship level, so looking at, it doesn't matter what subject in our life is in question, there is always a relationship that innocently is created by our mind with that thing, whether it's health or money or the personal relationship corner or in business. You know, some people do really well in business. They have a real great career, they're making lots of money, but their personal relationship is off. But if they, and this was always my difficulty, I was seeing in some areas of my life, I could see it really clearly, and I had great and really big difficulties in my personal relationship. Now, when I can see so clearly about the relationship I have with my body, and as really the relationship got much better through just letting it be what it is, all I can say that it seemed to be really useful for me. And Mick kept reminding me, actually today, he said something to me. He said, but look, you know, you seeing your relationship in a different way because you've been looking at what the relationship is like, and your personal relationship has gone much better, which is true. So looking as a
Seeing where it's working.
Say that again?
Seeing where it's working, I'm hearing you say.
Seeing where the relationship level is working, and then stepping back and saying, well, what's different between a relationship to money, the relationship to a person, a relationship to my health, the relationship to my body, the relationship to my children, the relationship to whatever it is in the outside is always created by thought. It's always created through the principles. It's always created the same way. So we can build bridges in the way of how we could see. I got a colleague, for example, I talk with her really regularly, and she's got a problem with seeing it in regard of money. She just can't see it in money. She can see it in the health corner, in the relationship corner. She can see it in her business corner. She can get over herself a lot, but she can't really see it when it comes to her relationship with money. And we've been talking, and we're sort of trying to bring light of what's different. What is different? There is nothing different about that. It's the same. It's when we can step back from whatever it is we see on the outside world, right? That we struggle with. And we can see how it's all the same. It's something on the outside that we see through our thinking and that we relate to through our thinking. We could, for example, name all the things the same thing. And all the things, whether we name it money, relationship, business, whatever it is something outside. So let's I found it really helpful for myself. What I did was I labeled everything the same thing. And for just a day or two, whenever I thought of it, I came up with, oh, that's just an appearance. Oh, that's an appearance. Oh, my boyfriend, he's an appearance. Or what he says, it's an appearance. This cup is an appearance, because in reality, I only label it as a cup because that's conceptual thinking. As a baby, I didn't know this is a cup. So let's call this as an appearance. You guys on the screen, you're an appearance. Everything I called an appearance, and it suddenly made me smile because everything is just the same, and the way we relate to it comes through the principles and comes through the personal view we have in the moment, which goes up and down with our state of mind. But nonetheless, whatever we experience out there is nothing more than an experience, and it's nothing more than an appearance. It doesn't matter what kind of name I'm going to give it. And I really got such a lot out of that. And it's the same game with looking at what the relationship is like that we have with things. And the body is just one of those objects that we can label appearance. It's an appearance that we get to live with. Like, I really like that Alan said, like, I squeezed my finger and it hurt like hell. But it doesn't really mean anything until I give it meaning. If I don't give it meaning, I don't experience the meaning. I just experience the sheer pain of it, which is neutral and hasn't got a sticky feeling attached to it. So I'd love to hear whether that makes sense. How that makes sense, and whether there's something there you'd like to share about that. Have you noticed any?
I've got Alan and Jennifer. I'm going to unmute you both and see what happens. You're both unmuted.
Okay, well, shall I just start? It just reminds me, Katja, of what you used to say. At one time you said, you taught me to say life is flowing through me, life is living me. And I was able to do that with, and do it in all sides of life. and it was very helpful.
Mm.
That's all.
That's lovely. That follows the knowing that it is all the same. Therefore, it works the same in everything. Yes. Yeah, we only interfere, and we only make it worse, really, in a way. If we don't interfere, it can just flow its natural course, and it's usually on a higher level of consciousness than when we do interfere. So thank you. Yeah.
Hmm. I was thinking that the one of the things, or maybe the main thing that makes my relationship with anything, my body, my dog, my wife, my job, my house, either a positive or negative feeling, is how much insecure thinking I have around it.
Mm.
Now, if I have an MS symptom and I have a lot of insecure thinking, give it a lot of meaning and then feed that scary thinking, my relationship will not feel very good. And it's one thing to know the details of that insecure thinking, where it's coming from, the content of it. It's another thing to begin to recognize that it's just insecure thinking, that it's thought in the form of scary thinking. And if I'm safe, I think that's why I've come to seek safety when I'm freaking out, is because if I try to figure out why I'm feeling unsafe, that works for a little while. If I try to seek safety directly by doing something that seems to fix the suffering I'm going through. So, I value both. There are lots of systems and ways of thinking and approaches to wellness that aim to understand the details of our insecure thinking. And that's one reason why I appreciate this understanding, is because it points to the role, our creative role in the process in the first place.
Mm.
And anyway, those are just a few random thoughts.
Valuable random thoughts.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I remember that it's so easy to go down the road of, well, that's just your insecure thinking, or, well, that's just thought, or, well, you know what I mean? It's so easy to go down that road, and it's not helpful. I've learned anyway, I've learned to shut up if I'm not feeling it, I guess, is the way to describe it. That's why I really like these groups. These internet groups are so cool because it's safe here.
Uh-huh.
It's safe here, and that's wonderful. So.
Well,
how could you say more about that? How is it safe?
It's just safe. It's safe.
Yeah.
These people in mediation, it's you have to come together in good faith in order to mediate. I'm a mediator.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in these groups, in all these Zoom groups, in this group and other groups I've been in, people have joined together in good faith.
Mm.
And they've come together with a pure intention to try to make their lives better and help other people.
Mm.
So I think that's one reason why I enjoy what you guys are doing.
Great. Thank you. So, are you going to say something, Katja?
well, I was just sort of thinking that we shared a lot of different viewpoints, and I'm sure it'll somehow inspire own opportunities, so to say, to catch ourselves with a relationship.
Mm.
And at least that's what I take away from it, because we can't exist in the world other than through being connected in a relationship to all the objects that appear to be out there.
Mm.
And for me, when it comes to health stories, as soon as I can become aware of that, I can look in that direction and know, like we said, there's all those different variations possible. At any time it can look different, and for me that has taken out a lot of the fears in anything that's got to do with my body. You know, if something appears and lots of symptoms or whatever, when something happens, like I was doubled up in pain the other day, I just don't buy into the story of that so much, because I have seen that the relationship to that can change any moment. So my whole focus on what I look at in my body and the symptoms that are there has changed to the extent that it's like I don't care as much for it, but in a good way. Sounds like, oh, she doesn't look after her body, but that's not the case. But I know I'm not at risk. I know I'm safe, you know, coming back to the safe. I'm safe anyway. Whatever happens, I'm safe. So I don't add my attention to the things that are going on so much. In that sense, I don't care as much. And the funny thing is, what happened since I've been doing that is that I got less and less going on in the body.
You mean less and less problems?
Yes. I can't even really be sure whether there are none, or is it just that I don't observe them. But it doesn't make a difference for me, because that is exactly what I get to experience. I get to experience less problems because I don't look out for things. I just let it be a body. I mean, for example, at the moment I'm having hot flashes. You probably sometimes see that I'm breaking out in a sweat and I'm all wet. And I can see all the thinking that I have about that. I'm not free of thinking about that at all. I have thinking about it, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. And I just let it be what it is. My body's changing, something is happening. I'm just fascinated by it. As much as I'm concerned, I'm not bothered. I just deal with it in the moment. It's not always pleasant, it's not always nice, but more or less, what can I do? I notice the more I resist it, the more it happens.
Something you said reminded me of something I was thinking about earlier, and it's to do with that fascination. And I think going back, you know, or just coming back to that sense of it's all happening exactly as it should do. You know, if I don't know if any of you have seen those documentary videos about neural pathways, or you know, how when they have the kind of electron microscope and they go into nerves, and how, you know, the science of new neural pathways being created and that kind of thing. For me, when I watch something like that, it blows my mind in the sense of what's going on at that level, what's going on at the organic level with the cells creating, dividing, changing, and all of those things are going on in our bodies the whole time. And sometimes when I think there's something wrong with my body, it suddenly strikes me that that's so arrogant that I should choose to say what's right and wrong with this phenomenal natural force that's going on. This thing that's all the unimaginable complexity that's in our bodies,
and ability
and abilities, yeah, and unknown abilities, and I mean, some people get a state of wonder by looking out at the stars, or thinking about the galaxy and so on. I can do the same thing by just reflecting on what's going on in this physical body, this natural being. It fills me with wonder sometimes that it's just taking care of business by itself, including the stuff that we think is wrong, or I think is wrong. It's how did it get there?
It sort of reminds me of what I was reading the other day of one of the posts. I think it was following when Alan was sharing his new blog site, and there was a conversation going on, and there was somebody sharing about the Iceman, and the Iceman being able to jump into really ice cold water, and also to run marathons in with hardly any clothes on, in the freezing cold, and in snow, and in really harsh conditions where we would think it's impossible and you would actually not be able to do that, and he does it. And that not only that, but he also he found a way of teaching others to do it too. So it's not just unique to him that he might have a super body or something like that, but he can teach others within a few days to have the mindset to being able to survive those really, really hard conditions, and to take that the body doesn't take any harm of that. They don't get a cold or the flu, or or some arms or legs are falling off because they are frozen or something like that. So and it in that moment I actually had a bit of a light bulb moment, because our relationship to our body, we're looking at our health issues that are current and that are here and now. But we also have a relationship to our body in a different regard. It's in the regard of what we think is possible, of what we think our body is capable of, and in the regard of how we think that this good friend is able to run a marathon in snow with no shoes on, right? So there's an expectation or a limitation there. And we can also believe in our good friend that he would be capable of doing much more than what we think he can. So I found that quite fascinating, that obviously this Iceman guy, that he pushed the boundaries first for himself, and then also started sharing it with others to sort of push what's common and what's been done and what we normally do into something that seems spectacular. But let's just imagine for a second that you and I and all of us here in the meeting, we would go to an Iceman seminar, and then next week we start running in the snow, We all come to Michigan, and we
Great
want
for
to have
Phyllis, yes. I was thinking.
see Phyllis and have a run in the snow, you know, and so it could be something that any human being is capable of, and it's like, wow, really. And I wonder what we would be capable of if we pushed even those boundaries. And I mean, in history, I don't know, like 200 years ago, we didn't even know how to fly. Is that true? You know, now we all jump on an aeroplane, and in 2.5 hours I can go to London and or I can go to Paris, or I can go to Berlin, or I can go to, you know, a few more hours added, and then I'm in the States. So this seemed impossible, but it wasn't impossible. It's just that we didn't know it yet. And I think there's some big, huge, it's another aspect of seeing that relationship that we have with things. We think it's possible or it's not. And we cannot imagine what our bodies would be capable of. And I mean, all of us, we have heard stories where people said they've done something, they never thought they would be able to do that. Actually, we've got an interview lined up with somebody. You might have heard that we were in the process of collecting interviews, and we've done one with Alan already. And we're going to be doing a few more, and when we start publishing interviews we're doing with people who have been impacted by seeing through certain scary health situations or chronic health situations. And we're going to be interviewing Leslie next week, who experienced a shift in her health to an extent that she not only got rid of her health issues, but also that she said to me that she never thought that her body was capable of what she ended up doing. So I can't wait to hear more about that, because she hasn't really shared it with me yet. So we're going to have a really inspirational story in that regard of thinking what's possible. I don't know, is there maybe any thoughts? Have you guys experienced something like that where you didn't think it's possible, but you've done it anyway, where your body really surprised you? Jennifer has.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got one, but it's nothing like a snowman. Nothing spectacular. It's very ordinary. You know, it's really very down to earth. Yeah, what has happened? Yeah, I've recently been losing weight. And a bit like Mick, I was at a point where I felt that from now on it was going to be downhill, and I had sort of put on a lot of kilos that I was going to keep, because I didn't have any expectations about my future in a way. Anyway, I've learned recently that I can eat whatever I like. I can choose whatever I like. I can have whatever I like, and I can still lose weight. And in doing so, I also gave up the things that I was addicted to, like tea and coffee, drinking a lot of milk and honey in tea. So and I haven't been doing the gym. I haven't been doing any exercise other than living, walking, and my body is healthier than it was, you know. And it's just healing itself. and it's so cool. It's so cool.
You say you learnt it. Was there something
Well,
that?
when I was adolescent, I learned Weight Watchers because my mother was doing it. So all my life, I've imposed certain rules on my health, and I learned this from I'm not sure what her name is. It's a coach called Elaine Helides. Who's written a book. She wrote a book that I have on Kindle, that I downloaded for free on Kindle. It's called The Mind for Weight Loss, the No Diet book. And then she's also got 3 free coaching videos on internet, which I've watched and enjoyed tremendously. And I haven't followed strictly what because it's a method that she lays out. I've just used the ideas that I like, and I haven't done anything. I haven't been strict about anything, and I've just taken it easy, and it's just all falling into place. So I'm not aiming to run around in the snow. But I'm also just getting used to what I was like as a child. I never used to be hungry at breakfast time, but I was taught to have a good breakfast. And now I make myself a juice for breakfast with some vegetables and fruit, whatever I feel like, and it just gives me this fabulous feeling of vitality, but I don't need to eat anything until I'm hungry, and even then I don't, it's just so cool. I can do whatever I like.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
This is really inspiring, because it's what I say. It's like you follow your body along in the way it guides you, because the body knows better than we do. When we let this body part be what it is, it's our companion, and the body and the physical side of it knows already, because it is who we really are. And when we are connected to that, we go with the flow, and that's an amazing example of that. That's really wonderful. So happy to hear, how well you're doing with that. It's great.
Thank you.
So I think Anna-Greta has waved her hand.
Yeah. Just to tell that I feel, or I experience, my body surprises me over and over again. And I notice when I'm surprised that it is my thought that gets in the way of life itself. Because when I think, well, this day I was out working in the garden, and somehow I thought, oh, this is hard work for me, and felt a little bit pity myself a little bit. And then I got very tired. I felt tired with that thought. And I think, no, you have to finish. So I think, go on. And then I let go of that thought, or I don't know, look at my garden, and then I did my work, finished my work, and my body was absolutely fine. And I went in and had tremendous time after that body work, so to speak, in my garden. And surprised myself again. Well, your body can do everything when you get out of the way. And that's a fact. It's just, it is just a fact. Just get out the way with your thoughts. And it takes care of itself, I think. Yeah, that was that. Had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's in the design that it takes care of itself.
Yeah. But you forget. Sometimes you forget.
Well, is that a good place to call it a night? Well, unless you're in in the States, in which case it's the morning. Right. It's really nice hanging out in this space.
I think I just want to thank you all for what you shared and
Yeah, likewise.
being here with us. It's so rich to be looking from different angles at the same thing, really, and how we all make sense of things in a different way. But then at the end, where it all comes that it all comes from one source, and that's the source where all the solutions lie. And it's been lovely to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
You're gonna unmute us all now.
I'll unmute everybody. Yeah. Okay, you're all unmuted.
Thank you guys. This has been
Thank you.
great.
Thanks a lot. It's been lovely to be in this safe space with you all.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
day.
Good
night.
And good morning, everyone.
No worries, Phyllis.
No worries.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye bye.
Thank you for
See you,
tonight.
Alan.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Nice to hear you, Jeff.